At 14, I found myself standing in the middle of my grandmother's front yard, bags in hand, heart sinking. My parents had just driven away, not bothering to look back. They had dropped me off like a forgotten package, a mistake they no longer wanted. I had never imagined it would end like this, but here I was. Growing up, I always knew I was different. I had been diagnosed with epilepsy when I was young, and to make matters worse, by the time I turned 8, I was also diagnosed with dyslexia and severe ADHD. I didn't stand a chance. My parents, though well-intentioned, had never really known how to handle me. My brother, on the other hand, was the golden child, healthy, smart, easygoing. He was everything my parents wanted in a kid. And, of course, he got all their attention and love. I got nothing but frustration. When I was 6, I began to notice the differences in how my parents treated my brother and me. They treated him like a prize, while I was the burden. I couldn't blame them. I wasn't easy to deal with, but I needed their support, their love, their guidance. Instead, they made me feel like I was a disease they couldn't shake, a problem they didn't know how to fix. As I grew older, things got worse. My parents' frustration turned into resentment, and I could feel it in every moment. At home, it was like walking on eggshells. Every time I walked into a room, they stopped talking, as if I had disrupted their perfect world. It didn't matter how hard I tried to fit in, I was never enough. The worst part wasn't my health problems. It was the way my parents made me feel about them. The way they treated me like I was invisible, like I didn't deserve to exist in their lives. By the time I hit my teenage years, I was lost. I had already become numb to the idea that my parents didn't love me. I started acting out, failing classes on purpose, cutting ties with my friends. I wanted attention, but they were too distant to notice. The more I pushed, the further they pulled away. When I was 14, things hit rock bottom. One day, I did something reckless at school, something I knew would finally get their attention. I brought a pack of cigarettes to class and lit one up right in front of my teacher. It was a cry for help, but all it earned me was expulsion. When my parents were called in, they didn't even bother to reprimand me. They just sighed in disappointment, as if they were tired of me. That day, my parents looked me in the eye and told me they regretted having me. They said if they knew what a disaster I would become, they would have terminated the pregnancy. They called me a burden on the family. That was it. They wanted me gone. For the next week, they locked me in my room, restricting me to the bare minimum bathroom breaks, food delivered, and nothing else. I felt like a prisoner. That was the moment I realized they didn't want me anymore. They had given up. And then the unthinkable happened. After that week of isolation, they told me to pack up my things. My brother and mother packed for me while I waited in the car. When we drove to my grandmother's house, I thought maybe they just wanted me to stay there for a while. My grandma, strict but loving, always treated me better than my parents ever did. But no, this wasn't a visit. It was my new reality. They were leaving me with her. I was being abandoned, not temporarily, but permanently. My parents had given up on me, and I was now someone else's problem. I begged them not to leave me there. I was 14, lost and desperate, but they didn't even flinch. They told me that they were done with me, that they no longer wanted a freak like me in their lives. My heart shattered. They left me at my grandma's house, and with that, I realized I had no place left in the world I once called home. Grandma wasn't prepared to take me in. She was elderly and had already seen the toll my behavior had taken on my parents. But she took me in anyway, reluctantly. It was clear to me she didn't want me either, but she was my only option now. I was broken, but I wasn't going to give up. My parents had pushed me to the edge, and now I was going to rebuild my life. I had to. My survival depended on it. The first few days at Grandma's were unbearable. I kept waiting for someone to come back, for my parents to realize their mistake, for them to come to their senses and tell me they were just trying to scare me. But no one came. It was just me and my grandmother, and I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in her world. Grandma was sweet, but she was old. She had already raised a family, and she didn't have the energy to raise a troubled teenager. I could see it in her eyes, the concern, the doubt, the unspoken question of whether she could handle this. I wasn't an easy kid to manage, and I knew it. My epilepsy made me unpredictable. My ADHD made me restless, and my dyslexia made learning feel like climbing a mountain every day. I had so many issues stacked on top of each other, and now I was dumping them all on her. But she never said it outright. Instead, Grandma gave me the space I needed, and despite everything, I felt like she was the only one who truly cared. She was different from my parents. She didn't treat me like a problem. She treated me like a person. Grandma didn't have much, but she made sure I had everything I needed. I was embarrassed at first to ask her for help. She lived on a fixed income, and we had to pinch pennies, but she never once made me feel like a burden. Instead, she found ways to support me. She took me to the local library, hoping I could find something that would help with my schoolwork. She took me to the park when I was feeling restless, though her arthritis made it difficult for her to keep up. But the real change came when she sat me down one evening, after I had spent a long day sulking around the house, trying to figure out where I belonged in this new life. "Listen, kiddo," she said softly with a smile that reached her tired eyes. "I'm not going to pretend I know what you've been through. Your parents, well, they've made their choices. But you're here now, and I'm not giving up on you." It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd heard in years. It was a lifeline. For the first time in forever, someone had given me a chance. A real chance. Not just out of duty, but because they actually believed I could be better. I didn't know how, but I knew that I couldn't waste it. Over the next few months, I started to change. Slowly, painfully, but surely. It wasn't easy, nothing ever is, but I was tired of being angry. I was tired of wallowing in resentment. Grandma's simple belief in me, in the face of everything, pushed me to start believing in myself, too. She didn't let me off easy. She pushed me to work on my schoolwork, even though I struggled, even though I hated it. She made me stick to a routine, even when I didn't feel like it. But through it all, she never made me feel like I was a mistake. In fact, my grades started improving. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but it was progress. Little by little, I began to find my rhythm, even though I was far from normal. I wasn't the perfect student, but I was doing better than I ever had. Grandma found a private tutor to help with my dyslexia, and while I still struggled with ADHD, I was learning how to focus for longer stretches of time. It wasn't just about schoolwork. Grandma also taught me things about life. Simple things like cooking a meal, taking care of the house, being responsible for myself. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was enough. She helped me realize that I didn't have to be perfect, just that I had to keep moving forward. But even as I started making strides in my personal growth, a shadow loomed over me. My parents. They weren't completely out of my life. They still called occasionally, mostly to check in on my brother. I'd hear about his achievements, his perfect life, how he was doing well at school, how he was excelling in his social life. And then there was the guilt. Every time I heard about how well my brother was doing, I felt like I was failing. They were constantly talking about him as though he was the child they'd always wanted, the child who could do no wrong. They never mentioned me, and when they did, it was often with an undertone of disappointment. It felt like they had already decided who I was, who I would always be. Then, one day, after almost a year of radio silence, they called again. I wasn't prepared for it. They had reached out to me about something that, at first, seemed like an innocent enough request, but it wasn't. Not really. It was a call about the inheritance Grandma had left me. At first, it didn't even occur to me that my parents had any interest in my life. But when they started mentioning my inheritance, Grandma's money, all the things she had worked so hard for, it hit me. They weren't calling to apologize. They weren't calling to make amends. No, they were calling because they needed something. My brother, it turned out, had gotten himself into serious trouble. It wasn't the first time he'd gotten into trouble, but this time, it was different. This time, he had gotten mixed up with some bad people, and now he needed rehab. My parents weren't offering to help. They were asking me to share my inheritance so that they could pay for his rehab. I was shocked. How could they be so brazen? They had abandoned me when I needed them most, and now they were asking for my money to bail out my brother, the golden child who never had to struggle like I did. The audacity of it was mind-boggling. I wasn't a fool. I knew exactly what they were trying to do. They were trying to use me again. For a moment, I considered it. Maybe I could help him, even if my parents didn't deserve a cent. But I realized something then. I was still that kid who needed love and support, And they hadn't given me either. Not when I was 14, not when I needed them most, and certainly not now. So, I made my decision. If they wanted my help, there was one condition. They would have to admit everything. They would have to acknowledge the way they treated me, the way they treated Grandma, and how they had abandoned me. They would have to publicly apologize for everything. And you know what? They didn't like that at all. They argued, called me cold-hearted, and told me I was being unreasonable. But I was done. I wasn't going to give in. They had to face what they had done to me before I would even think about helping them. And that was just the beginning, because this time it was going to be different. I wasn't the same lost, desperate kid anymore. I was strong now, and I was going to make sure they knew that. It wasn't easy maintaining that resolve. In my quiet moments, doubt crept in. I wasn't heartless. I didn't want to see my brother suffer, but I also knew that helping him without holding my parents accountable would mean accepting the same old cycle one where I was the afterthought, and they would keep on using me. I refused to be the person they thought they could lean on whenever they messed up. I wasn't their backup plan anymore. I wasn't their safety net. They weren't used to me standing my ground. They were used to a kid who cowered in the corner, hoping for affection, hoping to be noticed. But I wasn't that kid anymore. And when I made my demand, public acknowledgement of everything they'd done wrong, they were furious. For days, I didn't hear from them. The silence felt suffocating at first, but then it became a strange kind of relief. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't holding my breath for them to decide whether I mattered. They had made their decision years ago. Now, it was my turn to make mine. Then, out of nowhere, they showed up at my door. It was unexpected, and yet, in a way, it felt inevitable. They had come to talk, to beg, but not in the way I expected. It wasn't about an apology. It wasn't even about my brother's rehab anymore. No, this time, it was about money, my inheritance. The very thing that had made them realize they couldn't keep ignoring me. They came with their tails between their legs, but I could see right through them. Their faces weren't filled with guilt. They were filled with desperation. They weren't asking for my forgiveness. They were asking for my cash. At first, I didn't even want to hear what they had to say. My instinct was to slam the door and be done with it. But then I realized something. I had to hear them out. I needed to hear just how low they were willing to go, how far they were willing to push me, just to get what they wanted. I know you're upset. My dad started, his voice faltering, something I hadn't heard in years. But we're your family. We need your help. We're sorry for what happened, for how things went down. We're not perfect, but we're still your parents. He wasn't even looking me in the eye. His words were empty, rehearsed. They were saying the right things, but the sincerity was nowhere to be found. They were only sorry because they needed something from me, and I knew it. I didn't give him the satisfaction of an immediate response. Instead, I asked the question I'd been waiting to ask. Why should I help you? I felt the weight of the words even as I said them. Why should I help the people who abandoned me when I was 14, who told me they regretted having me in the first place? My mother's face went pale, her mouth opened to respond, but nothing came out. They didn't have an answer to that. They couldn't. For a moment, the room was silent. It was as if the air itself was holding its breath. Then, I did something that surprised both of us. I let them speak. Your brother, my mom began, but I cut her off. I don't care about your excuses, I said sharply. I don't care about your problems. I don't even care about my brother right now. What matters to me is the way you treated me. You treated me like I was disposable, like I wasn't worth your time, your effort. You treated me like I didn't matter. I could see them flinch at the truth. They had never expected me to confront them like this. They were used to the meek, invisible child who wouldn't dare stand up for herself. But that version of me was long gone. Finally, my dad spoke again, though his voice was now quieter, more defeated. We made mistakes, okay? We know that. We're not asking you to forget them. We're just asking for a chance to make things right. A chance? A chance? It was laughable. I wasn't interested in their chance to make it right. I had given them enough chances when I was growing up. I had spent my whole childhood hoping for a moment where they would see me, see the person I could be, if only they took the time. But they never did. I'm done waiting for apologies that will never come, I told them, my voice calm, steady. You don't get to dictate the terms of this anymore. If you want anything from me, anything at all, you have to do it my way, publicly. They didn't like it. I could tell. The look on their faces said everything. This wasn't what they had expected. They thought they could waltz back into my life and demand that I fix everything for them. But they had underestimated me. I'm not doing it, I continued. I'm not giving you money. I'm not helping you out without you owning up to what you did. You've hurt me in ways you'll never understand. And if you can't even admit that to yourselves, if you can't acknowledge the damage you caused me and Grandma, then there's no deal. There was a long pause filled with nothing but their quiet, frustrated sighs. My mom started to cry, but it wasn't the kind of tearful apology I was waiting for. No, this was the kind of crying that comes when someone realizes they've lost control. They knew I wasn't going to budge, and I didn't. We won't do it, my dad finally said, his voice tight with anger. We're not going to make a public statement just for you. I stood there, watching the two people who should have been my support, my family, turn their backs on me yet again. It was the final confirmation I needed. They weren't going to change. Not for me, not for anyone. So, with that, I made my decision clear. Then, we're done. Don't ever come back. Don't even try to reach me again. And just like that, they left, without another word, without an apology, without a single shred of acknowledgement that they had wronged me. But I felt a strange kind of peace settle in afterward. For the first time in my life, I wasn't begging for their approval. I wasn't clinging to the hope that maybe one day they would love me. I had released them from that responsibility. And in doing so, I had freed myself. Grandma wasn't around to see it, but she'd given me the tools I needed to stand up for myself. Her love had given me the strength I never thought I had. I could look at myself in the mirror now and know that I wasn't the person they had tried to mold me into. I wasn't a freak. I wasn't a burden. I was someone who had fought for herself, and for once, I was winning. The days after my parents left were oddly calm. It was as if a heavy cloud had lifted from my life, leaving behind a clarity I hadn't known I could have. I didn't feel guilt anymore, no matter how much they tried to lay it on me. In fact, I felt something closer to relief, a freedom I hadn't experienced since I was a child. The weight of constantly seeking their approval, of trying to be someone I wasn't for their sake, was finally gone. I didn't need their validation anymore. In the weeks that followed, I took a step back and reflected on everything. Grandma had always told me that healing was a process, that it would take time, and I wasn't in any rush to push through it. I had a lot of scars to deal with, scars that weren't just physical but emotional too. Every time I remembered the way they treated me, the way they abandoned me, the anger I had been holding on to started to resurface. But this time, I didn't let it consume me. I just acknowledged it, and then I moved on. I knew I had to keep moving forward. I was on my own now, and for the first time in my life, that felt like a real opportunity. I had spent so much time being a victim of my circumstances, but now I had the chance to be the person I wanted to be, not the one my parents or anyone else tried to make me. My life wasn't perfect. It still wasn't without its challenges, especially with my medical conditions, but I was determined to find a way through. I started working part-time at a local cafe to make some money, and I used whatever free time I had to study and work on myself. Every day felt like a new chapter, one that I was finally writing for myself. I even started making friends again, something I had pushed away for so long. It wasn't easy to trust people after everything with my parents, but I knew I couldn't live in isolation forever. I joined a group at school that focused on mental health awareness, something that was close to my heart after everything I had been through. The people there understood me in a way that no one else ever had. They didn't judge me for my struggles. Instead, they supported me. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in the world. Then, about 6 months after the last conversation with my parents, something unexpected happened. I got a message from a lawyer, someone I had never heard of before. My first thought was that it was a mistake, but when I opened it, I saw something that took me completely by surprise. It was about my grandmother's will. It turned out that my parents knew something I didn't. They knew that when my grandmother passed, she had left everything to me. Not just her house or the money she had saved, she had left me everything. I didn't even know how to process it. This wasn't something I had expected or asked for. It wasn't something I had ever thought about, but now it was mine. Everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed, was now in my hands. I didn't know what to do with it at first. The money was a blessing, of course, but it also came with a responsibility I wasn't sure I was ready for. I knew my grandmother had always wanted the best for me, and she had left me this to give me the chance she believed I deserved. But it also meant I was going to have to face the fact that, despite everything, my parents would never see me the way they saw my brother. They would never see me as the child they loved. And that hurt more than I was ready to admit. The lawyer's letter explained that my parents had been notified of the will, but there was no mention of their involvement in the inheritance. It was clear that they had hoped to get something out of it. Maybe they thought they could worm their way back into my life, now that they knew I was financially stable. But they were wrong. They hadn't changed. They hadn't acknowledged their mistakes. And the money? It wasn't for them. It was for me, just like Grandma always intended. I realized then that my decision to cut them out had been the right one. I wasn't going to let them back in just because they saw a chance to benefit from my success. So, I did what I had to do. I took control. I called the lawyer and instructed them to go ahead with the inheritance process. I made it clear that I didn't want any interference from my parents. The money was mine, and it wasn't for them to claim. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I wondered if I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. But then I remembered everything they had said to me, everything they had done. They didn't deserve my forgiveness, not yet, at least. They hadn't earned it. If they ever truly wanted to be part of my life again, they had to earn that right, not through words, but through actions. Days passed, and the silence continued. My parents didn't try to contact me again. Part of me expected them to show up, to beg for forgiveness, but they never did. And that made me realize something important. I had moved on. I had stopped hoping for a relationship that wasn't meant to be. But that didn't mean I was completely unaffected. Sometimes I still thought about what could have been. I thought about the family I could have had, the parents who could have loved me for who I was. But then I reminded myself of all the progress I had made. I reminded myself that I had built something for myself, something my parents couldn't take away, no matter how hard they tried. I had my own life now. I had my own space, my own purpose. I had my grandmother's love, and I was going to carry that with me. I was going to make her proud. I was going to keep moving forward, no matter what. And then, out of nowhere, I got a message from my brother. It was the first time he had reached out to me in over a year. I was cautious at first. I wasn't sure what he wanted. He had always been the perfect son, the golden child, the one who never had to face the same struggles I did. But when I opened the message, I was stunned. It was an apology, a real one. He admitted he had taken his good fortune for granted. He told me that he realized how much I had gone through and that he regretted how we drifted apart. He said he wanted to fix things. He wanted to be a better brother. For the first time in my life, I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was surprised, sure, but I was also open to the possibility of a new relationship, one that was based on mutual respect, not expectations. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't ready to let him back in just yet. But for the first time in years, I wasn't holding on to the past. I wasn't clinging to the old hurts that had defined my relationship with him. And that, more than anything else, was a sign that I was finally healing. Time has a funny way of changing things. I thought I had everything figured out, cutting off my parents, building a life on my own, finding peace in the chaos. But life, as it always does, throws curveballs when you least expect them. My brother's message was one of those curveballs. It had been weeks since I'd read his apology, and I was still processing it. He'd always been the perfect one in our family, the one who seemed to have it all figured out. He didn't have the health issues I dealt with. He didn't have to fight for attention, fight for validation, fight for love. And for years, I resented him for that. It wasn't his fault, but in my eyes, he was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. So when he reached out to me, I didn't know what to feel. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to tell him how much he'd hurt me over the years, but something stopped me. Maybe it was because I realized I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't that bitter, angry kid who had been left behind. I had grown, and as much as I had every right to stay angry, I also knew that holding on to that anger wasn't going to help me heal. I decided to respond, but not immediately. I needed to think it through. A lot had happened in the years we hadn't spoken. Our relationship wasn't just broken, it was shattered. And even though he was apologizing now, it didn't erase everything. The trust had been eroded, the hurt had been ingrained in my bones, and rebuilding it wouldn't be easy. I took a deep breath and sat down to write a response. I wasn't looking for some grand reconciliation or emotional closure. I didn't need him to fix everything for me. What I needed, more than anything, was to be honest with him and with myself. I hear you, I typed slowly. I really do. But I can't just forget everything that's happened. It's not that simple. I spent so many years feeling like I didn't matter, and that hurt more than anything else. You were the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, and I resented you for that. I resented that you didn't have to fight for attention, for love. I resented that you had the life I could never have. But I'm not that person anymore. I don't want to stay stuck in the past. And I'm not going to hold on to that anger forever. But healing takes time, and I'm not ready to just pick up where we left off. I hope you understand that. It was the most honest thing I had said in years. I wasn't asking for perfection, and I wasn't asking for anything beyond the truth. I knew that if he wanted to have a relationship with me, it had to be built on mutual respect and understanding. The past was part of us, yes, but it didn't have to define us forever. When I sent the message, I didn't expect an immediate response, but he replied quickly, which surprised me. "I get it," he said. "I was blind to what you were going through. I didn't understand, and I'm sorry. I can't change the past, but I want to do better. I don't want to keep drifting apart. I don't want us to stay broken. But I know it's going to take time, and I'm willing to wait, to prove to you that I'm here. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here." His words weren't perfect, and they didn't undo the years of damage. But they were a start. For the first time, I saw that he understood the pain I'd carried with me for so long. And maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to rebuild something that could resemble the bond we once shared. Over the next few months, we took it slow. There were no big heart-to-heart talks. Instead, it was small gestures, texts, phone calls, the occasional meetup for coffee. Nothing too overwhelming, nothing too emotional. We were both trying to find our footing again, trying to understand how we could navigate this new version of our relationship. It was awkward at first, and at times, I felt myself pulling away, scared of what it meant to let him back in. But with each passing day, it became a little easier. We weren't trying to fix the past anymore. We were just trying to move forward. But just as things were starting to feel normal again, another wave of change came crashing into my life. I had been living on my own for some time now, renting a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It was nothing extravagant, but it was mine. I was comfortable, and that was all I needed. Or at least, that's what I thought. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, one received a call from the lawyer who had handled my grandmother's will. "Hello," he said. "I have some updates regarding your grandmother's estate. There's something you need to be aware of." My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't uncommon for lawyers to contact me about estate matters, but there was a sudden sense of urgency in his voice that caught me off guard. "There's a complication," he continued. "It's regarding the house. The deed was not properly transferred, and there's some legal paperwork that hasn't been finalized. It's something that needs immediate attention." I froze. My grandmother's house was more than just a property. It was a part of her legacy, her history. I had thought everything had been settled, but now it seemed like there was another hurdle to overcome. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. There was no escaping it. I had to go back. I had to go back to the place I thought I'd left behind. The house, the memories, my parents. The thought of going back to that house, the place where I had been abandoned, made my stomach churn. I wasn't ready to face it, not after everything that had happened, but I didn't have a choice. I had to take care of this. Grandma was gone, and I was the one left to handle things. I called my brother, unsure of what to expect. "Hey, I need you to come with me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's something about the house that I need to deal with, and I can't do it alone." For a moment, there was silence on the other end. Then, my brother spoke. "I'll be there. We'll figure this out together." It wasn't the grand reunion I had imagined, but it was a start. I wasn't facing this alone. And maybe Just maybe this could be the beginning of something new. The drive to my grandmother's house was longer than I had expected. My mind raced with memories of that place, memories of feeling abandoned, neglected, unwanted. I tried to push them away, but they crept in, gnawing at me with each passing mile. My brother was quiet beside me, his eyes focused on the road, but I could tell he was just as uneasy as I was. He wasn't the one who had been left behind, but he knew the weight of our family's history. When we pulled up to the house, everything looked just as it had before. The large oak tree in the front yard, the red brick exterior, the small garden that Grandma had always kept tidy. It was all so familiar, and yet it felt foreign. This place had been my refuge once, but now it felt like a ghost of a life I had left behind. "I'll go inside first," I said, swallowing hard as I stared at the front door. My brother nodded without a word, giving me the space I needed. Walking through the door was like stepping into another time. Everything was still in its place: the furniture, the photos on the walls, the little trinkets Grandma had collected over the years. The smell of lavender lingered in the air, a scent I hadn't realized I missed until now. But despite the familiarity, there was something unsettling about it. This house no longer felt like home. The lawyer had explained that the paperwork for the house wasn't finalized properly, and now I was here to make sure everything was in order. But as I stood there in the hallway, I realized that the house was just the beginning. There were deeper issues to deal with. I had to confront the legacy my parents had left me, their abandonment, their failure, their cold indifference. It was all tied to this house, to everything I had been through. And now I had to face it. I was halfway through the paperwork when my brother entered the room. He had been pacing outside, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation, but he had come in anyway. "Do you need any help with that?" he asked, his voice tentative. I looked up at him, surprised. It was the first time he had shown any real interest in what I was doing, in what I was dealing with. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. "I think I've got it," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "But thanks." We stood there in silence for a while, each of us lost in our thoughts. My brother's presence was a comfort, but it also reminded me of everything I had lost. I wasn't sure if we would ever truly understand each other, but at least we were trying. And that was more than I could say about my parents. Eventually, the lawyer arrived, a man in his mid-40s with a calm demeanor. He led us through the final steps of the paperwork, and I signed my name, officially taking possession of the house and everything in it. It felt like a hollow victory. I wasn't sure what to do with it all. It was a symbol of my grandmother's love, but it also felt like a reminder of everything that had been wrong in my life. Once the formalities were done, the lawyer left, and it was just my brother and me. The silence was heavy, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt more like an understanding, a mutual recognition of everything that had happened. "I never really understood what you went through," my brother said suddenly, breaking the silence. "I mean, I knew things weren't easy for you, but I never really understood the depth of it. I thought Mom and Dad were just strict, but I see now, it was more than that." His words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I had wanted him to understand, to see the pain I carried. And now, he did. But it wasn't just about the understanding, it was about the change that came with it. My brother wasn't the same person I had resented all these years. He wasn't the golden child anymore. He was just human, and that made all the difference. "It's not about you," I said quietly, meeting his gaze. It never was. It was about them. What they did to me, it shaped everything. I had to fight for my place in the world, and they made sure I knew I wasn't wanted. He nodded, his face filled with a mixture of regret and guilt. "I can't change what happened, but I can try to make things right now. I don't want you to feel alone anymore. I'm here." It was a simple statement, but it meant more than I could put into words. I wasn't ready to forgive him completely, not yet, but I knew this was a step forward. Maybe we couldn't go back to how things were, but we could move forward, together. We spent the rest of the afternoon going through the house. It was a strange experience, sorting through Grandma's things, finding memories tucked away in corners. There were old photo albums, letters from her friends, and pieces of jewelry that she had collected over the years. Some things I kept, others I packed away, unsure of what to do with them. But in the end, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I was finally accepting my place in the world and in my family's history. As the sun began to set, my brother and I sat outside, on the porch that had once been a place of solace for me. It was quiet, the world around us slowly fading into the night. We didn't speak much, but the weight of everything we had shared hung in the air. I wasn't sure what the future held for us, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let my past define me anymore. "I'm glad you're here," I said, breaking the silence. "It's been a long time, but maybe we can start over." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something real in his eyes. It wasn't just guilt or obligation, it was understanding, and maybe a little bit of hope. "Yeah," he replied softly, "maybe we can." It wasn't the perfect ending. It wasn't a fairy tale, and it certainly wasn't a quick fix, but it was real. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had the power to move forward, to build the future I wanted, not the one that had been handed to me. The next day, I packed up what was left of my grandmother's things, locked the door behind me, and drove away. This time, there was no lingering sense of abandonment, no bitterness weighing me down. I was leaving that house, but I wasn't leaving behind my past. I was carrying it with me, taking the lessons I had learned, and using them to build something better. And maybe, just maybe, I had started to forgive both my parents and myself. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight, but I was ready to let go of the anger, the resentment, and the past that had held me captive for so long. It was time to move forward. And this time, I was doing it on my terms. Story 2, my fiancée abruptly ended our relationship, saying she needed to be alone. She left me to pursue other men, but months later she came up at my door pregnant and claimed it as hers. We've been dating for almost 5 years. When we were in high school, we began dating. I'm a junior. She is a sophomore. After chemistry class, I vividly recall how anxious I was when I asked her out. To be honest, I believed that we were headed towards marriage and starting a family. Everything seemed ideal when we got engaged a while ago. Man, I was so damned pleased. I was like the happiest I had ever been. We have been discussing our future, our home, the number of children we hope to have, and other topics that couples discuss when they believe they will be together for the rest of their lives. We even shared a tiny flat that we rented. I had been working full-time at this job my uncle gave me while she was completing her degree. In comparison to many individuals our age, the salary is fantastic, stable, and comes with benefits. Every Friday, we would go on dates. We continued the custom of occasionally just going out for burgers and seeing a movie. At other times, we go bowling, try a new restaurant, or do something else. Seldom did we consider anything important. Yes, we argue over everyday matters. Not much, like who did the dishes first or what to watch on Netflix. Then one day, she absolutely surprises me. No fighting, no warning flags. Nothing that would give me the impression that anything wasn't right. I believe the night was Tuesday, although it may have been Wednesday. I was waiting for her to return from class while viewing some YouTube videos after I got home from work. She appears strange as she enters, like if she had been sobbing or something. "You're not going to like what I have to say," she says as she wants to speak. She sobs and assures me that she will always love me for around 15 minutes. However, it appears that we dated too young and that she needs some time to be alone. I was completely perplexed. Even so, what does that mean? I therefore pushed her to clarify what in the world she was discussing. We've been together for 5 years after all. We got engaged. Together, we had a fucking life. You need to be single, so you don't just throw that away. This isn't how it operates. She provided me with a long list of illogical excuses. I don't want to take responsibility for my happiness for some reason. Desiring to travel without being concerned about me and other nonsense. That only made me more perplexed. Claimed to be stuck and in need of self-discovery. What the devil does that even mean, really? This isn't a romantic comedy. This is our life. I told her she could already do all that stuff right now, and we didn't need to break up. I offered to give her space or whatever she needed. I even suggested we could take a break from wedding planning if that was stressing her out. I was desperate, trying to find any solution that didn't involve us breaking up. Nothing was changing her mind, though. She just kept shaking her head and crying, saying she'd already made up her mind. Finally, it clicked, and I asked if this was really about her wanting to date and see other people. She denied there was anyone specific she wanted to date, but ultimately admitted that, yeah, that's basically what she wanted to do. I was completely broken by this. Felt like someone had ripped my heart out and was stomping on it right in front of me. She tried to tell me again that she loved me, and I just told her to keep that shit to herself. Then she had the nerve to ask if I was going to be okay. Like, what the fuck kind of question is that? Of course I'm not going to be okay. I told her that wasn't her problem anymore and walked right out. I drove around for hours that night just trying to clear my head. Ended up at my buddy Jake's place. He let me crash on his couch for a few days while I figured out what to do. I couldn't stand being in our apartment. She tried calling and texting multiple times after that, but I just deleted everything without reading and blocked her on everything: phone, social media, email, everything. I wish I could say I handled it like a man and didn't care. But the truth is, I fell into a really dark place for a while. Jake tried to get me to go out, meet new people, but I wasn't interested. Eventually, I went back to the apartment. She had moved most of her stuff out by then, left a note saying she was staying with her friend Amber for a while. I threw the note away without reading all of it. Those first few weeks were the worst. I'd come home from work and just sit in the dark thinking about everything. I stopped eating regularly, started drinking more than I should have, called in sick to work a couple times when I couldn't bring myself to get out of bed. My mom came by once or twice, tried to talk to me, but I just told her I was fine and needed some time. The only thing that kept me going was work. I threw myself into it, taking extra shifts whenever I could. One of my coworkers, this older guy named Phil, noticed something was up and took me under his wing a bit. He'd been through a nasty divorce years back and would let me vent during lunch breaks. Never gave me any bullshit advice, just listened. That helped more than he probably knows. Fast forward about 3 months without any contact, I was doing a bit better. Not great, but functioning. Started hanging out with Jake and some other friends again. Even went on a date that my cousin set up, but it was awkward as hell and I wasn't ready. Then yesterday happens. I'm pulling into my driveway when I notice a car parked across the street. Something about it seemed familiar, but I didn't think much of it. Then she gets out and starts walking toward me. My first instinct was just to ignore her and go inside. I mean, what could she possibly have to say that I would want to hear? But as I'm walking toward my door, she calls my name. I turn around and snap. What? And that's when I see it. She's obviously pregnant. I just stood there, not knowing what to say. Like, what do you even say in that situation? She apologizes for sneak attacking me, but says she's been trying to reach me for a while and knew I had her blocked, but she needed to talk to me. Said she'd even come by a few times when I wasn't home and left notes, which I guess must have blown away or something because I never saw them. I wasn't happy to see her at all, especially not pregnant with some other guy's kid after everything. I mean, she broke up with me to go be single and date other people, and apparently she wasted no time doing exactly that. I tell her we don't have anything to talk about and turn to walk inside. That's when she shouts that the baby is mine, which stops me short in my tracks. At first I assumed I misheard her or that it was some kind of weird joke. I turn back around and just gaze at her for a minute. She's weeping again, mascara streaming over her cheeks. I ask her what the heck she's talking about. To cut a long story short, she claims she's 4 months pregnant, which would suggest she was approximately a month pregnant when she broke up with me, but didn't realize it. She claims she didn't even suspect until the 2nd month, when she missed her period, but got inconsistent results on home pregnancy tests. Then she went to a clinic and got it confirmed. According to her, she spent the following month trying to convince herself to obtain an abortion, but couldn't go through with it. She asked me to let her come in so we could chat. Said she didn't feel comfortable talking all this on my front yard, where the neighbors might hear. After waiting there for what felt like forever, I eventually allowed her in. The apartment looked different with her in it again. I hadn't altered much since she departed. Still had the same furniture, similar images on the walls nonetheless. Somewhere in a drawer I placed the ones of us. She saw that the plants she had given me for my birthday. the previous year were still in my possession, appeared shocked that it was still alive. I had no idea why I continued to water the foolish creature. We took seats as far apart as we could on each end of the couch. I think I was more cruel than I ought to have been. She was knocked up by a guy who doesn't want anything to do with her after I informed her that I didn't think it was mine and that she wanted to go fuck other guys. She is rushing back to me in the hopes that I would act like her father. She broke down in tears and said that I was correct to believe so, but she vowed she never dated anybody else. I was starting to lose my temper at this point. I questioned her about if she truly thought I would think that she ended our relationship so she could be unattached and date other people, but she didn't. During the 3 months of pregnancy, summarizing the remainder of our chat was pointless. She says she never had the opportunity to go out with anybody else. She claims that when she said she didn't have a specific person in mind, she was being honest. She claimed to have had intense terror and a sense of missing out on something when we broke up. However, she came to the realization that she was truly missing me after our breakup. She believes the need to end our relationship was unexpected, and that being pregnant made her impetuous and hormonal. It had not even crossed her mind. Said that the day following our breakup, she woke up feeling as like she had made the worst decision of her life. She inquired as to whether I had ever read any of her emails or texts. When I declined, she informed me that she saw our split was a mistake and texted me the day after to say she wanted to talk and take everything back. She apparently tried to explain and apologize in hundreds of mails over the course of the following few weeks. If it was so essential, I asked her why she didn't simply come find me in person. She claimed to have tried, but I was either at Jake's house or at work. She even made one visit to my mother's home. However, my mother informed her that she should respect my decision not to visit her. Up until now, I had no idea about that. She said that first she didn't inform anyone. Not her friends or parents. No one. For a while, she tried to ignore it in the hopes that it would simply go. When she was unable to ignore it any longer, she thought about getting an abortion and even scheduled an appointment, but she was unable to follow through. She began making more urgent attempts to get in touch with me at that point. We'd been conversing for a few hours by now. She was quite exhausted when I got up to fetch some water. You do realize that pregnant ladies need to rest? I have no knowledge of this material. She requested water when I asked if she wanted something to drink. This is where I am at the moment. My heart is still broken by all of this, even after hours of conversing with her. A part of me wishes I could simply take her back and ignore all my uncertainties and anxieties. Be a father and a husband. After all, that was the original goal, wasn't it? Perhaps not so soon, but certainly not in this manner. Even though I would really like to, I will not father a child that is not mine, with a woman who abandoned me to have sex with other men. I don't mind being a stepdad in the future, but I can't do it with someone who purposefully broke my heart. A paternity test is what I've demanded. She will ask her doctor at her next checkup, but neither of us really understands how to set one up. We might have to wait till the baby is delivered, but I'm not sure. But for my mental health, I need this. She claims she hasn't dated anybody else, so she says she has no question it's mine. Thus, she's okay with it. I became a bit emotional when she gave me the ultrasound images, thinking that my child may be in them, but I can't allow myself to look at them until I'm positive. I can't raise my expectations just to have them dashed once more. She gave me a letter she claimed to have written about a month ago before she departed, saying she had been holding on to it in case she ever had the opportunity to speak with me. It wasn't until she was gone that I read it. She expresses how much she loves me, how much she regrets hurting me, and how ending our relationship was the worst decision she has ever made. She claims to have allowed her anxieties control her and to have worried about the future. She talked a lot about her desire for us to be a family, how she hasn't given anything else any thought for months. I'm at a loss for what to believe. She appears real. On the other hand, she appeared content with me until she wasn't. How can I be certain that she won't subsequently regret this impulse? This is what I'm having trouble with. 1. What should I do if the child is mine? For the sake of the baby, should I attempt to work things out with her? Should I just co-parent and maintain emotional distance? I am aware of my parents' opinions. They are traditional and would expect me to marry her as the correct thing to do. But is it what any of us should do? Why do I think she hasn't dated anyone else since she broke up with me? She may have slept with someone else after becoming pregnant, even if the child is mine. I don't want her back if that's what occurred, even though I know it could make me an arsehole. That type of treachery was too much for me to bear, even though we were officially split up. 3. This is clearly not a problem if the child isn't mine, as I have a firm no to that. I would quickly break off touch once more. I want to do whatever it takes to make this work, she adds. She has volunteered to cover the cost of couples therapy and provide me with whatever kind of openness I choose. Claimed that I could use her phone, email, or anything else that would help me feel safe. That's encouraging, in my opinion. If she had something to hide, why would she provide that? I informed her that I needed time to reflect and take it all in. Although she appeared disappointed, she comprehended. She left her new address and phone number. She asked me to give her a call when I was ready to speak with her further, and is still staying with Amber. Stated that if I can, she would like me to attend her upcoming doctor's appointment in a week. Right now, my head is spinning in all directions. I would have been overjoyed to become a father and marry this woman 4 months ago. These emotions still exist, but they are now mingled with hurt, pain, and mistrust. I keep vacillating between wanting to believe her and believing that this is all a complex deception or manipulation. After she left, I called Jake and told him everything. He believes that before I make any decisions, I should get a paternity test, which I had already intended to do. However, he cautioned me against falling back in because of the baby alone. Stated that I should be certain that I want her, not merely the notion of starting a family. I still haven't answered my mother's calls. I'm not prepared to share all of this with her. In any case, she never really liked my ex. They always said we were too young and too serious. I suppose she was correct. Since she arrived, I have had trouble sleeping. Continue to imagine what it would be like to be a father, if I'd be competent at it. When I was growing up, my own father wasn't around very often, always in operation. That's not how I want to be. However, I also don't want to use a child as an excuse to push myself into an unsuitable relationship. I would appreciate any guidance. Here, I feel like I'm drowning. Edit. I'll add this update to address the primary points that people keep bringing up, because there are far too many to address one at a time. I listen to everyone's comments about my handling of this being problematic. I understand. There have been times when I've been a jerk. I've learned more about pregnant hormones today, and I can now see how this would have impacted her. From what I'm reading, it really can mess with your head in ways I never realized. Please understand that when I wrote this, I had just finished talking with her, and my emotions were raw and confused. I didn't mean to come across like such a jerk to the people asking if I've ever loved her at all. Yes, of course I have. I love her with all my heart. I know that now and knew it last night. That's why this has been so hard. If I didn't care, I wouldn't be this torn up about it. For those saying I should have at least read her messages, you're right. I probably should have, but at the time I was too hurt and angry to think clearly. It was easier to just block it all out. I realize now that was immature. To answer the most common question, yes, it's possible to do a paternity test before birth. Apparently they can do that with a blood test from the mother. Now though, it's pricey. We're looking at options. I can't answer all your questions since I'm headed out to chat with her again. I can't let this go. I've been granted a second opportunity with her, and that's all I want. I'm still going to seek for a paternity test just for my peace of mind. I hope she understands, even though I know it could hurt her feelings. I suppose I'm simply going to take a leap of faith and hope that everything she said about hormones and never actually wanting to split up is true. Sorry to everybody I insulted because I came off as a terrific jerk. This scenario has brought out the worst in me, but I'm trying to do better. Update. Can't believe how much this blew up. Thanks for all the comments, even the ones calling me names and such. I suppose I'm worthy of some of that. Many of you requested an update. Here it is then. I wanted to provide an update on the events that have transpired since the weekend. Much has occurred. To me, it feels like a lot, but it's actually not that much. Pregnancy hormones may seriously affect some people's mental health, I discovered after reading your comments and researching the topic. Much more than I ever imagined, actually. I realized that perhaps it wasn't totally her fault when I read about pregnant women who experienced strange phobias, made rash judgments, or completely changed their personalities. I visited the flat where she and her companion Amber reside. On the journey up, I was quite anxious and kept switching the radio station since nothing sounded good. Twice I nearly turned back, but I forced myself to continue. Amber opened the door when I arrived and appeared startled to see me. She slammed the door in my face or gave me this expression as if she wasn't sure whether to let me in. Prior to all of this, Amber and I had always gotten along well, but I suppose she's protective now because she supported my ex through everything. Amber graciously left so that we could speak for a while. I believe she was trying to warn me not to upset her pregnant friend by making it clear that she was only going to the coffee shop down the street and would return in 2 hours. I won't tell you everything, but it was a long, painful, and tearful experience, primarily by me. Unfortunately, I broke down completely. Any appearance of strength and invulnerability vanished in a matter of minutes. I feel so exposed around her. Additionally, I don't really like it. I felt so much better once I had everything out of my chest. She was kind, loving, and patient. I've known this girl for a long time. We discussed everything that had transpired during our 3 months apart. I expressed my sadness to her and my inability to comprehend why she would discard everything we owned. She listened and continued to apologize, stating that she was overwhelmed and in a panic and that she had no other suitable explanation. She acknowledged that she had never dated anyone else. She did had 2 males who knew we were split up, ask her out, but she told the first one she wasn't ready, and by the time the second one asked, she already knew she was pregnant. She offered me her phone and said I could go through her texts if I wanted to, but I didn't feel the need to. Something about the way she was talking to me made me believe her. She told me about how lonely she'd been these past months, how she'd weep herself to sleep practically every night, regretting what she'd done. She stated she'd drive past my business, occasionally hoping to get a glimpse of me, but never had the guts to walk in. She'd written me hundreds of letters that she never mailed because she didn't think I'd read them. The pregnancy has been rough for her. She's been ill a lot, had to take time off from school. Her parents were furious at first, but have come around and are being supportive today. She hasn't told them. We're chatting again yet. After hours of conversing, we ended up falling into one another's arms. By this moment, Amber had texted saying she was headed back. In order to continue our talk, my ex came home with me. Even though I was anxious to see her again at our former flat, something about it felt natural. We spoke nonstop for nearly the whole night. She showed me additional ultrasound images and informed me about her doctor's appointments. We discussed names and decided that we didn't want to find out the gender until after birth. In the end, we spent the entire weekend together. To be honest, I had never even considered pregnant sex before, so I was afraid I may find it repulsive. If I had even contemplated the possibility that the child wasn't mine, I wouldn't have given it a second consideration. It wasn't strange, though. Perhaps a touch strange, but in a positive sense. The main lesson to be learned from all of this is that I now have complete faith in her. Here's why. It is she who is demanding a paternity test. She would probably not insist on it if she wasn't certain. However, she claims to have never dated anybody else, and I now believe her. She stated that she wanted us to do the exams so that I may proceed with total confidence and without any uncertainties. She made arrangements for me to accompany her to her prearranged Obgyn appointment yesterday. I had never gone to one of them before, so I was anxious. I had no idea what to anticipate or whether the doctor would make things unpleasant. This is the exciting part. The coolest motherfucker I've ever met is her doctor, a man who must be in his mid-30s or so. Really, this man would be an amazing friend if we didn't work together in the doctor's office. I wasn't treated like some ignorant fool by him, just described everything as he went. I was able to view the baby on the ultrasound after we completed the examination. It dawned on me then that I would soon become a father. The physician indicated that the head, spine, little arms and legs all were healthy and typical. The heartbeat was really rapid, similar to a little drum. Normally, I don't get emotional, but after the test, it affected me. She agreed when the doctor asked whether now would be a good time to have the conversation. She clarified that it was her idea and that she wanted him to speak to me, but I was unaware of what was going on. I talked to the doctor after she departed. He said that my partner had discussed everything with him more than a month ago. Although he was unable to go into detail about her medical situation, he wanted me to be aware of the realities of female hormones and how they might impact pregnant women. The coolest person ever, like I mentioned. He explained everything to me so I could get it. He discussed the significant hormonal changes that occur during pregnancy and how they might impact mood, judgment, and even personality. Said that women frequently experience panic attacks or act rashly, particularly in the early stages of pregnancy, when their hormones are raging and they are unaware that they are pregnant. He said that they were scheduling the paternity test for next week, after she spoke with him about it yesterday. He advised us to proceed for our own mental well-being. He had no reason to question that the baby was mine, though, given her past and the chronology. In addition, he talked for a few minutes about how I was feeling, and even recounted a tale about how he and his wife almost split up because of a pregnancy-related problem. He had actually moved out for a short time before they could sort things out, and they had been arguing a lot during her first trimester. They are happier than ever now that they have 3 children. That being said, if you're ready to work through the difficult times together, they may occasionally result in the strongest partnerships. I walked out of that day with complete faith that this is a relationship worth pursuing. I genuinely believe that she simply experienced a crisis brought on by a combination of emotions, hormones, and impatience, and she was unaware of the reasons for it. It helps explain what happened, but it doesn't justify it, and that's sufficient for me to go on. We had supper with Jake and his girlfriend yesterday. At first, it was a little weird. Jake continued to stare at her suspiciously, but by night's end, everything felt nearly normal. At one point, Jake asked me if I was certain about everything and pulled me away. When I informed him I was, he promised to support me no matter what I chose. A few hours ago, I completed bringing her belongings back to my place. Not all of it. We're going to start our adventure to make this work, but she's keeping some things at Amber till we settle in, but enough that she can remain here comfortably after she gets off work tonight. Since none of us is yet conscious of the feelings we may have accumulated, I'm not hurrying things. However, I already own a ring. When we split up, she returned the identical one. I was unable to bring myself to give it back, and I'm going to ask her to marry me again if everything works out for a month or 2. It is preferred by both of our families that we be married before starting a family. That brings to mind, I now have to inform my parents that they will soon become grandparents. Moreover, we're back together. It ought to be enjoyable. My mother will talk about all of this in great detail. Naturally, her parents are already aware of the kid, but they are unaware that we are attempting to conceive another. It's going to be an interesting chat, because her mom didn't like me at all to begin with. Amber pulled me aside and gave me the "if you hurt her again" speech, but she appeared pleased for us and helped us move some of her belongings. Although I told her that wouldn't happen, I can see her point of view. She has witnessed all of the suffering and sorrow during this entire ordeal. Anyway, I really appreciate you all correcting me. Despite my want to trust her, I rejected the hormone theory. I've learnt more from some of your experiences. Next week is the planned date for the paternity test. Although I am aware of the outcome, it is helpful to get that assurance so that we can proceed without any uncertainties. If something important occurs, I might provide another update. Story 3. Who informed everyone that I'm not truly family. Adoptive parents typically give preference to their golden kid. It took me years of verbal abuse and exclusion before I made the decision to break things up. My half-brother and his wife, who were in their late 30s at the time, adopted me when I was 16 years old. When they adopted me, they already had 6 kids, but it was never a problem. Since they first met me and then adopted me, they have treated me like their own child. With the exception of their golden child, who was just 4 months older than me, all of their other children did the same. We'll refer to him as Chad. Chad has consistently been a rude jerk towards everyone, including our other siblings. In addition to saying nasty and hurtful things to everyone and getting away with it, he would practically fistfight our elder sister. In addition to having severe anger management difficulties, he was able to accomplish everything my sister and I could never do, including fixing holes in walls and breaking doors, go out at night, get a free automobile, etc. He stood in front of the entire class during our high school years together and declared that I was not and would never be his sister. Then, in front of his friends, he informed me that I would never be a member of his family and that I should simply go on. This was not a one-time event. Until he moved out and I stopped speaking to him, he would continue doing this. After getting married shortly after graduating high school, moving in with his wife's family, and having a kid, Golden Boy once again found himself at the center of the family spotlight. The first grandchild. I have avoided him as much as possible since this incident, only seeing him for yearly family photos at our mother's request. Our mother was angry that I was separating myself from him, so I recently made the decision to tell her what he had said and done. She was not going to be unhappy because, in essence, she pulled the "that's still my kid, and it's my first grandbaby" card. Sincerely, I didn't give a damn. In any case, I knew it wouldn't make her reconsider her child. You're the only one who can handle these types of infants, since no one would help. So I suddenly received a message pleading with me to come watch them. It appears that parents are weighting their child down by not nursing, and as a result, the infant is very needy. Additionally, the mother has been essentially isolating this child from birth due to her germ paranoia. Since its inception, just about 6 people have actually held it. They are aware that I have ADHD and am an insomniac, which prevents me from sleeping most of the time. I also don't find weeping bothersome for some reason. It doesn't concern me if the baby cries for hours on end. At this point, it's difficult to determine if it is a blessing or a burden. My sister is upset with me, since it seems that I am the only family member they have sought for assistance. Everybody wants to see this baby too. Since the baby's father claimed that I wasn't a member of his family, am I the jerk for refusing to be around or care for the child? I would want to provide an update. Knowing that my views about this entire issue are valid helped me feel a lot better after reading everyone's remarks. I wanted to provide an update that might not be to everyone's taste. I ended up chatting with 2 of my high school pals after posting. In fact, they were there on several occasions when Chad Public made such statements. I spoke to them for a short while. When I was still living at my parents' house, one of these friends actually visited virtually every week, so she had firsthand knowledge of my family. We all agreed after our conversation. I try to see whether we can manage things this time. If not, I may inform my sister and mother that I tried, and we can end the matter. And I'll permanently break off contact with my family if the bad behavior continues. I thus agreed to go babysit. At about 8 p.m., I went to Chad's residence. The moment I arrived, Chad's wife was really delighted to see me and thought I was amazing. She was worn out. She had you could tell, I'm acting like a 1-year-old. She spent a few minutes telling me how delighted she was. She told me she was happy to be going out with Chad when I came over. Before she eventually mentioned the kid, I listened to her talk endlessly. He'll be called Seth. As night route feedings, etc. Nothing too big, she added. She continued talking about his nightly sobbing episodes and the fact that he wouldn't go to sleep until the middle of the morning when she reached the finish. I was a bit on that, but I suppose every baby has a distinct path. She went on to say that they would just be gone for 4 hours and will be home at the latest at 1231. Following this, Chad appears from their room, literally begins speaking to his wife, glances at me, and then gives me a brief glance, a nod, and a wave before leaving the house. After that, his wife merely instructs me to text or call if I need anything. I was astonished for a moment, but I went to work to see Seth, which was strange because I had never seen him in person before, not in the pictures that hang around our partner's house. He is the most adorable infant ever. He cried only because no one else was in the room, and otherwise he was fine. Not as a result of weaning. It was nearly 12 now, at about 11:30. Every few minutes I would glance at the clock to see what time it was. When 12:30 arrived, I thought, should I text them? No, I reply. Let me give them a few more minutes before I have to text them. They did say they would be home by now, so I texted them both at 1 to find out where they were. Neither of them responded to me. At 3 in the morning, they finally arrive. I'm angry now because they never texted me back, not because I had to look after Seth for a longer amount of time. For example, what if there was an emergency? As soon as they enter the living room, I text them to ask where everyone is. And nobody responded. Chad's wife then begins to say that. Yes, Chad said it would only take an hour or so and that everything would be all right. And I thought, you know what? Everything is all right. In any case, Seth is asleep. I rolled my eyes at the strange way she looked at me. He isn't crying at night because of weaning. He becomes lonely. He is overly attached. Just let him know you were in the room when he starts crying, and he will go right back to sleep. I started to walk out with my stuff as I was right, about to walk completely past. Chad, when I turned around and was like, so you aren't going to say anything to me after I looked after your kid for like 7 hours now? He snorted at me and was like, no, my wife is the one who talked me into this. Anyway, pissed off at this point, I said, so this wasn't, I don't know, possibly a way to be able to apologize for high school or maybe all those other times you decide to outcast me from the family. Because I was under the impression that maybe you want to patch things up because of you asking me, of all people, to watch your kid. He sat there for a minute and just said, why should I apologize? Because literally nothing from high school has changed. Man, you really do need to just grow up and understand that me and my wife aren't going to cater to you like mom and dad did because you're adopted. You ain't our family and you won't ever be. At this point, I just got in my car and left. I ended up texting my mom about all of it, thinking she would get it in the morning when she woke up. No, of course she had to be awake. She apparently told Chad's wife about the conversation we had, about all the stuff Chad had said and done to me in school. Apparently his wife felt bad because she had adopted sister too and felt horrible that Chad had done and said all those things. Apparently mom didn't know about Chad asking about the babysitting thing until now, and she started talking to the wife, who is now upset. Apparently she thought Chad would have changed since then and didn't think he will act the way he did when I left. I told my mom that I'm done with him and that if something happened with Seth, then I would be there, but I was done with them until that happens. Way things are going, I will most likely be cutting my whole family off because this isn't worth the stress anymore. Update 2. So it has been a hot minute since I last updated on the whole Chad situation. It's mainly due to the surprising fact that my family, my mother and sister, not bugging me as much lately. The first day or two after the interaction with Chad was a bit hectic. Both of them were blowing up my phone trying to get me to talk to them. Mostly my mom just making excuses for Chad and my sister trying to basically just tell me to get over it. I ended up telling the both of them in text and over the phone that I was over it and I would be cutting myself off completely from Chad and his little family. This sparked some anger, but my mother soon went quiet and later my sister. Everything seemed to be going pretty good after that for a while. That was until a week later, when my sister showed up unannounced at my apartment, demanding that I take the blessing of getting to be around Chad's sheltered child when no one else seemed to be able to, basically acting like it was some huge honor that I was asked to babysit. I almost snapped. I wanted to call her a bitch and to get off my property and not come back, because I was just so sick of it. However, I didn't. From my doorstep, I told her that if she wanted to see the baby so bad, just go over and see it. It wasn't my issue to deal with, and I slammed the door in her face and watched her leave. It's been radio silent for a while now, until earlier this week. I was scrolling on Instagram when I noticed that my oldest brother, the one that I get along super well and supported me about carrying, Chad off his girlfriend of 4 years and the same age as me, are now engaged and posted pictures of the proposal. I noticed the post had been made last week, but no one had told me, not even my mother. I texted my brother's girlfriend, asking her about literally everything that was happening. She was surprised because my mother had said she had told everyone in the family about the wedding. She then told me that they would be holding a family meeting at my parents' house to talk about the wedding plans. I said, okay, the meeting was for today, around dinner time. I showed up and walked into the house and noticed that a lot of stuff was different, decoration-wise. My parents had our family photos all arranged around the living room, and a few random frames with multiple small photos in them as well. I noticed that they had replaced multiple small photos of specifically me from the frames and replaced them with now pictures of Chad and his wife and my older brother and his girlfriend. What were maybe 6 pictures of me on any of the walls? There were now 2. A baby picture of me and my senior high school photo that are now in the hallway. Not even the living room. I ignored it and didn't say anything. After a while, everyone showed up, except for, of course, Chad, who my mom told that he wanted to spend time with his baby boys. They all started talking about the people plans of the park, aka people who were going to be key parts of the wedding cast. I tried my best to listen and take in all of what my brother's girlfriend was saying. I noticed by the end of it all, my name was literally never added into any of the main plans. I wasn't mentioned at all for another in the plans. I stated a question why I was there if I wasn't going to be in the main plans of the wedding. I was kind of like, why not just send me an invitation? Then, I went home and texted his girlfriend, asking about what had happened at the little meeting. Apparently, my mother had told her that I wouldn't want to be involved in any of the wedding stuff, and that it wasn't my thing. She called me unfeminine, and that I wouldn't like doing any kind of bridal stuff because I'm not girly. She then said everything was set in stone. Now my older sister is going to be a bridesmaid, and my little sister is to be a flower girl. My little brother will be the ring holder, and my other little brother and Chad will be groomsmen. And allegedly, my mother also informed her that because of what occurred with Chad, that I shouldn't be placed at the family table, but at a guest table. I will simply be another guest at the wedding. I didn't really say anything back since it stung. It stung that my mother would say that about me, that I was not feminine, and that just because I personally didn't do a lot of girly things in my spare time, I wasn't going to be able or enjoy doing something like a wedding or be a bridesmaid. I can't believe she would say that about me. To be honest, I don't sure whether I'm even going to go. The wedding is slated for the end of the year. It seems dumb and petty, but this wounded me. It stung that I'm being outcasted, most likely due to Chad yet again. And as I am typing this, my sister is messaging me about how she is helping plan all the wedding stuff. Honestly, I'm going to leave it off at this for right now, since I don't know how to even feel, if you know what I mean right now. In the next day or two, I might update when I feel up to it. Mini update. I don't even know what to say. I didn't anticipate posting another update so quickly, but my elder brother's fiance recently informed me that Chad's wife is expecting a child again. Update number 3. I haven't updated in a minute. I would be a little dishonest if I said that it's because everything is going so well. Since the prior post, my situation has only slightly improved. Since the past few updates, I have relocated even further away from my parents, partly in an attempt to begin the process of severing their relationship with me. Though not enough to truly improve my mood, this has helped a little. They still chose to disturb me by coming up to my new house and just giving me a little heads up, even though they are largely my mother. Regarding the wedding, there has been no news. The only invitation I have received is in the mail. I will no longer attempt to press it. Although I will probably depart after the ceremony and not remain to socialize, I will still go. The only reason Chad's predicament has become worse is because they agreed in a group chat not to hold a baby shower or even a gender reveal. They recently revealed that they are expecting a daughter. I'm not trying to be rude, but Chad's wife is a stretch. The fact that Chad forced her to get up and go for an ultrasound at random in order to determine her gender. She pretended not to want to do it at all. They apparently visited one of those upscale ultrasound facilities where you can acquire high-tech ultrasound images and elegant fetus models. Additionally, Chad declared his intention to attend college and requested a $1,000 loan, which he was granted. They have always made it clear that none of their children would ever get a loan from them. When they gladly handed him the money, I felt sick to my stomach. But when I got to college, they refused to lend me $20 for school supplies. They declined to assist me in enrolling in college. The group conversation was muted by me. I also learned that my sister could have told my mother about me. When I was in high school, I came out as bisexual and preferring women. I have a lesbian cousin who is married to a woman, my mom said, and then she related a homophobic story about how her friend had traumatized her in college by taking her to a homosexual club where she was approached by another woman. To be honest, this didn't go well. Not very good. Because of the violence I endured at the hands of our biological father, my brother firmly thinks that my passion for women stems from trauma. Knowing that none of them would genuinely stand by me when all of this came to light crushed my heart. All they would say was that they were uncomfortable with my life. In an attempt to save both my feelings and my partner's feelings in the long term, I essentially made a pact to myself that I would never inform them if I ended up with a female relationship. The idea of people staring at me and accepting what they said about how they feel about my way of life makes me really uneasy. I'm afraid my sister told her mother that I was seeing a woman. I never did it when I lived with them in the house, but I have since moved farther away. I discovered that my sister had posted a photo of me and my girlfriend on Instagram. After learning all of this, my girlfriend encourages me to refrain from sharing photos of us on Instagram since she is aware that my family follows me. My sister had been browsing through my Instagram friends' photos because my girlfriend never tags me in any of them. I had to see my sister in person for something not even a week after the photo was out. When she began to make awkward remarks about my dating life and whether or not I was seeing anybody, I just said, maybe, and moved on. After 2 days, my mom arrives at my front door with some store-bought cookies and asks if I have anything to share with her. I ignored her and remained silent. Since then, she hasn't spoken to me again. A few hours later, my younger brother contacted me to ask if I had informed his mother about my dating life, since it seemed like she was going nuts and his dad was telling her it was simply a trauma reaction. Since I haven't disclosed my relationship to anybody, it is obvious that someone told her about it, especially since they are bringing up the fact that I am seeing a woman. Since I'm doing everything I can to cut them off, I genuinely don't know what I should do at this point. My partner assures me that we can overcome it together and advises me not to dwell on it too much. Since she is the only thing keeping me calm during this entire change, I genuinely don't know where I would be without her right now. Though this update isn't very noteworthy, I wish I could claim that my life is improving, even though it's only doing so slowly. Right now, I just want to express my gratitude to everyone who has helped me along the way with these updates. The feedback I've received from everyone has truly helped me realize how dysfunctional and unfair my family has been to me, and how I shouldn't allow them to continue to control my life and minimize my emotions. In a few months, following the wedding, I want to provide an update. The 4th update. It has been a very long period. It's unbelievable that I haven't written anything or updated my site in over a year. Life has truly taken over, and I'm amazed at how much time has passed. Recently, one of my acquaintances who is aware of my writings informed me that it seems that my blogs and other content have gained popularity. When they informed me of the enormous responses I was receiving there, I was taken aback. To be honest, I never imagined that anyone would genuinely find any of this material interesting. I assumed that nobody would care about my sentiments or my family, so I would just publish and go, but obviously not. I've returned to provide you all with an update. Though I kind of want to address it first, I do want to go over some of the things that I've been seeing people say. Many individuals have expressed the opinion that their parents kept them in the dark and that none of the other children were aware that I was their blood half. That isn't accurate. They were aware of the situation before they even met me. I would only be placed in foster care until I reached adulthood if the children didn't accept my adoption. I suppose that when this was brought up, Chad lied. In the end, I believe Chad lied because I don't think he liked me from the start. Perhaps it's because he sought to intimidate me by playing with my mind. In general, Chad was a bully. Additionally, I feel comfortable talking about what happened at last. Our father was never met by my biological half-brother. His mother was a drug addict who became pregnant with him when he was still a juvenile and finally lost her rights as a result of her drug and alcohol abuse and neglect of him. In addition to being violent, our father was a drug addict. For years, he abused both my mother and myself. At the age of 14, my mother tragically committed suicide in front of me. As if that weren't enough, I was placed in foster care after DCF took me into custody because my father was also dying of stage 4 cancer. Before being adopted, I was fostered by my half-brother and his family for nearly 3 years. 4 days after I turned 17, my father passed away. People have also asked me why she kept returning. It's just that I have abandonment issues, which I am aware of from attending therapy. Not only do I lack a strong support network, but I also don't have many friends. I believed I could ride out somehow, even though that sounds foolish now. There was a way to resolve the problems my family was causing me. I realize now that I can't. They are all set in their ways, so there is nothing I can do. Additionally, I am aware that many people are adamant that I pull the cart, but I am not in the mood to do so. I grew up next to them as an equal. I never wanted to be used as a means to an end. All I wanted was to have siblings when I could and to feel like a typical child. The other kids view me as a sister, and I shouldn't act like their biological half just because Chad is a dick. Hearing my younger siblings refer to me as big sister, sissy sis, and even sister makes me happy. I adore referring to them as my big brother, little sister, and little brother. If anyone else finds that problematic, I apologize. My half-brother, his wife Chad, and his older sister have been the only bad guys in all of this. I have never received any different treatment or words from any of the other children. Let's move on to the update. I attended the wedding, and it was lovely. One of my younger brothers and his girlfriend ended up switching seat names and sitting with me, but I was eventually seated with some family friends. The ceremony was incredible. In the end, I spent half the night ignoring my older sister. Following the ceremony, Chad left right away, tearing off his tie, and went to his wife, who was shocked to find that neither Seth nor their other child, Emily, were present. I don't mean to come across as impolite, but Chad's wife wore very casual clothing, while the majority of his were dressed in suits and elegant gowns. She was dressed in an ugly dress with a cactus motif. The wedding cost only $1. Out the butt type of stuff. I mean, we were instructed in advance to wear really elegant clothing to the wedding. I wish I could claim that everyone was correct to make such a big deal out of the table arrangements. I comically wish that I could tell you guys that I went batshit crazy and just started fucking threatening people and stuff, throwing tables, making a scene. I can't though, since it could surprise you. It might not. What happens next? Chad and his wife go. Well, we would love to stay, but we have to get home to the kids. We left them with insert wife, mom's name, who now lives with them. And we should just head home to be safe before just walking away from everyone. Everyone was shocked for a good hour. Once we all started to be seated in the dining hall, they didn't even say goodbye to bride or groom before just walking off and leaving. Mind you, it was a 30-minute drive to the venue, and the wedding was about maybe an hour in which they were late to anyway. They arrived up roughly 20 minutes before the ceremony started. They didn't even remain for the lecture or dinner, let alone dancing. My sentiments were a bit confused after that. Although Chad wasn't present to spoil the remainder of my night partying, it nevertheless tarnished it. I spent the night having fun with new friends, dining and talking with my younger brother's girlfriend, and ultimately drinking and dancing on the dance floor. It was altogether a terrific experience. I have since split ways, somewhat with my half-brother and mom along with my sister. My sister has tried to make little steps to restore our friendship. However, I still do not know whether I will ever forgive her for disclosing my LGBT relationship to her parents, when it was made apparent that it wasn't a good idea. We periodically text one another and send weird memes and videos. It's something I believe my bio half-brother has made it incredibly plain that he is still extremely uncomfortable by my lifestyle. I can't really conduct a discussion with him anymore since he makes everything really political and inflammatory. I can't even ask him anymore because of it. He can't tolerate LGBTQ plus characters in TV series or even films. So what shows have you been watching on TV for light conversation without him launching into a borderline homophobic or transphobic tirade? Since then, I've blocked him on Borderline. Mom is the same person she was. She seems to try to ignore me most of the time. When you speak to someone, you'll notice that they will gaze at you as if their eyes are lifeless. It's like that when you chat to her half the time. She still tries to stay in touch with me and follow my every move. However, I've gradually become more aloof from her as I don't want to keep feeling the way she does and her bad vibes. I simply don't want to be around her anymore for some reason. I don't really care anymore. but Chad and his wife haven't tried to get in touch with me again. Since he hasn't attempted to message or phone me, I haven't blocked him. If he does, I'll just attempt to ignore him. Since I started watching Seth, I haven't seen him or met Emily. As horrible as that sounds, I don't care if I ever do, and I doubt I will. I no longer care since I am not his family. I would want to quickly express my gratitude to everyone who has helped me over this entire process, in a depressing way. I want to let everyone know that, hopefully, this will be my final post. I'm now in treatment and trying to live my best life. I sincerely hope that I won't have to deal with Chad or the majority of my strange relatives ever again. However, I am aware that I may have to on some level. According to my therapist, it could take me years to get over many of the emotions and sentiments I have against my entire family. All I can hope for is that one day I will be able to properly sort out how I feel about this family in general. When I get family photos in a few months, I could post an update. Until then, I'll be attempting to live the life I've begun without them bugging me all the time. Edit. Making it public. At most, I speak with each of them 2 or 3 times a month. I'm working at my own pace right now to cut them out. This is what my therapist and I are working on. Therefore, I won't care if people keep saying that I'm not leaving or that I've cut them off entirely as I read the comments. Both of those things have traumatized me during this phase of my life. Under the supervision of a professional, I am improving both my physical and mental well-being. At my own pace, I am. Thank you. The 5th update. I apologize if this update seems a little boring. I came on primarily to provide a brief update. It's been a long time since I used this account. To be honest, aside from me cutting off the majority of my family at this time, not much has happened. Something that makes me very happy, I'll admit. Except for my biological brother's wife, with whom I only texted once a month or so, I cut off all communication. For some reason, ending that relationship has been the most difficult. The main reason I was able to finally cut people off was because of one of the most significant events that occurred recently. I thought the whole thing was incredibly trivial and petty. My older sister, the one who used to harass me by coming over to my apartment out of nowhere, apparently found out that, get this, I have pronouns in my IG bio, and decided to one day just randomly start harassing me over a text about it. She went on a long homophobic, transphobic rant calling me demonic, and the devil saying I was being possessed by demons, all over having pronouns, which I have had for years, in my bio. I honestly realized then and there that I had to instantly cut her off if she was going to continue pestering me. In the whole chat, it was almost like she was suffering some kind of religious delusion. She used demon and devil a lot. She brought up my buddies who she doesn't even know, so I shared the text with them. My friends really ended up banning her too, on social media, because the way she was acting was so alarming. She also criticized me for having a connection with her, stating I never should have reached out to her dad and been a member of their family since. Obviously, my life choices influence her and her family. It was pages of religious babbling and trash like that for a solid 3 hours till I blocked her. I also have relocated and live nowhere near any of these folks now. That's why I believe it is so ridiculous that she acted as if anything I do even impacts them when I don't even live in the same town as them. Nor do I talk to or engage with anyone. They, as a family, converse to or have friendships ties with. Anyone inquiring, yeah, I did end up putting a restraining order on her. I essentially expressed her all of my thoughts about the scenario she has put me through the past few years. She did not like it one bit and decided to say, I'm not going to read all of that because you're just trying to gaslight me and I'm not going to fall for that. At the end of the day, I just feel terrible for you. I was so sick of her at that time that I banned her on all of my social media accounts, along with everyone who knew her, including my sister-in-law, with whom I had attended their wedding before going private. It's been rather quiet for the past 4 months, without hearing from her. I have no regrets about that. I still occasionally use FaceTime to chat with my younger brother, but regrettably, I avoid interacting with the younger children. I interrupted the older brother and his spouse. To put it mildly, I was also done with them. I came across a number of pornographic things on social media, and I don't want it in my life. Chad, his spouse, and their children. I haven't even heard or seen them in a long time. Nothing more. I've relocated to a whole other county, which is rather far from them. My fiance and I couldn't afford to relocate to a different state just yet, but it was my dream. Overall, it has been beneficial to move as far away from them as possible. I'm now working with my therapist virtually, and I've been improving gradually. This is all I have. However, I'm not sure whether that was the update you were looking for. I'm quite content with my current situation. I'm eager to get rid of these folks once and for all. With my girlfriend, I'm really content. My girlfriend will never see this because she is unaware of this account or that I have been sharing any of this content. I want to ask her to marry me when we are stable and ready, and I'm hopeful that we will be able to relocate out of state by next year. She'll probably say yes. I am so excited to begin our lives together as more than simply a couple. We are overjoyed. I am overjoyed. We appreciate everyone who has stayed. Perhaps I'll have even more good news to share in a year or two. The next time I update, I hope to be able to confirm that she did say yes.